Hi, I'm Dawn Tamari, and you're listening to and watching another episode of A Teaspoon of Healing. Today, I have a guest with me, Kenny Kirkwood. Kenny is a
Hello.
musician. Hi, Kenny. Kenny is a musician, educator, and folktivist. Hi, and welcome.
Hello. How are you? Thanks for
Hey,
having me on, Don.
I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
That's great. I'm good.
Good to have you. So, Kenny, before we talk a little bit, do you mind briefly describing a little bit about your background and what you do to the people watching or listening?
Sure. I am a musician, primarily known in Canada for working in the jazz realm and the rhythm and blues. I've toured around Canada a few times with different jazz festival tours in the summer, and toured in Europe a few times with other groups. All that stuff's on my website.
Okay.
So I currently have a project of my own called the Bwewin, and I've been a band leader all along in my career. And the current project is a collection of songs that I've written over the last 20 years that were at intersections of life and times where life was very busy, and yet
Hmm.
these songs came out
Oh,
at
okay.
seemingly the most surprising times. And yeah, so during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, my father passed away, and he was
I'm
always a big
sorry.
thank you. And he was a big proponent of my music and always asked me what I was doing with my music in particular, as opposed to all the sideman jobs that I was doing, playing as a jazz standards player and so forth, or cover bands,
Mhm.
wedding bands and that sort of thing. And so I put out this album as part of my message to my fans about getting along and about self-care and about honoring relationships to the earth, and just trying to help individuals slow down
Mhm.
through the music in a way that music has helped me to slow down in my personal practice.
Oh, I really like that. How can music help us slow down, just kind of get more in tune with ourselves and, what's important to us and maybe a message we wanna get out, whether you were creating or just kind of even exploring music?
When I look back on the privilege of education that I had with music,
Mhm.
and my family was middle class, but they so we had money for lessons, so I recognized that privilege. And but I was lucky to meet people that in my life, teachers who were very spirited and very holistic in their approach. And so when I was 11, 12, 13, I took piano lessons, which was all sight reading based and extremely frustrating for me because I have a learning disability that visual spatially makes it hard for me
Okay.
to read graphs. So I
Right.
remember I used to hit my head on the piano, like loving
Oh.
the sound of the piano,
Oh,
the piece
yes.
as she would play it and demonstrate it for me. And then I'd like try to sight read it. And it would take like forever. Right. And I'm like, why is it I love music so much? And yet this is the only way to learn it, through reading.
Mhm.
And it was a very frustrating experience.
Okay. Okay.
So I eventually quit when I started high school, and I switched to the
Oh,
saxophone, which
okay.
was much better in two ways. One, because you only have to read one note at a time. And so I was much more already advanced in that regard. And plus it requires you to do deep breaths.
Right.
And
Right. That's
so
a
as
really good
you're
point.
breathing in deep and you're sitting tall and you're doing a gentle blowing out the candle and just streaming and squeezing, but you're maintaining your musculature around your skeleton and holding it open and doing all that good yoga stuff, even though you're not calling it yoga.
Mhm.
You're learning to
Right.
blow a wind instrument the same way that singers
Yeah.
have to use that physiology, and less so for piano, guitar players, and drummers and so forth.
Mhm.
But so that was a real benefit to have a teacher who was to have an experience with the saxophone and the lungs. Also, when I was always a water rat as a kid, and then I became a lifeguard when I was a teenager. So, in
Mhm.
my own teaching practice now, I always i- instruct people that the breathing rhythms of swimming are similar to what we create when we do music and the phrasing that results. So they're
Really?
yeah. So if you take a swim with me and breathe in,
Mhm.
we're blowing bubbles, and we're swimming, and then all of a sudden our head pops up, and we in one instant fill up our whole body to that
Right.
full posture. And it's the same if you're playing a horn. Da ba ba doo bee ba da ba da da
Mhm.
diddly
Oh,
da
yeah.
diddly da 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 da, right?
Right.
Do
Very
these
good.
pickups, the phrasing of the playing with breath and rhythm.
Oh,
Uh, it's
that's really
when
cool.
when I went to York University, there was a professor that was my saxophone professor and a composition teacher, And he also had a karate school, and he taught qigong and healing arts aspects
Oh,
of
cool.
karate as well as the martial arts. That also was a profound teacher to have, someone who taught us that musicians traditionally don't take care of their bodies, and
Mhm.
that the certainly in the jazz tradition there's so many stories of addictions and mental health issues that came as the
Mhm.
cause of racism, and black people trying to survive in cities,
Mhm.
with under colonial rule and carding and all the traumas that are continue to be
Yeah.
afflicted, right?
Right.
And but he said, those aren't role models to emulate, right? Those all the master teachers who are still alive, they maintain, they at some point had the strength to be able to, and the supports to be able to, say not for me, right? He'd start every class with a standing meditation, and we do about 5 to 10 minutes of just breathing, and he'd guide us through no mind and one mind and focused mind and problem solving mind. And yeah, he's very influential and esoteric teacher, which also comes through his music and in mine as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, music in general, are there any pieces that you've worked on or any songs that I guess in your life could be by somebody else as well that could just really have resonated with you or were really cathartic? So if whether it's something that you created or maybe something you listened to.
Sure. I mean, the numbers of things I can listen to, I mean, a lot of them would be Stevie Wonder from childhood. I grew
Yeah.
up in the
Yeah.
70s. I also, because I grew up in Zambia, there was a movement in the 70s, an underground movement that's called Zamrock.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was growing up in that time when this music was happening, and the British engineers who lived there at the time built guitars and amplifiers and pedals for the young men who were in villages playing on their box guitars and metal can guitars and
Hmm.
what have you.
That's
And so
really
it took
interesting.
over the whole country in terms of being able to. There was this huge
Hmm.
surge of bands that could play and be heard around their villages, right? And it sort of fit the urban youth of it. And there's a whole fashion style around it as well. And that early childhood inspired me to start a band called Zamka in around 2003, and it was kind of like Shuffle Demons meets Sun Ra, kind of happy community music. The real aspect as a young child who was musical, to grow up in Zambia as a child in a place where the oral tradition is prime. It's the indigenous people. I grew up with the Bemba and Nyanja speaking people. That music is music and dance and drumming are all the same.
Hmm.
They're all going to
Oh,
happen, and people have been doing it together instinctively for thousands of years.
you grew
Yeah,
up there, so you spent a lot of time there as
yeah,
well. So that really was like influential for you. And yeah, so like you were saying, the communal aspect. So like music in general, like you had mentioned, it's something that people have been doing for thousands of years
yeah.
together. And so that must have really had an impact on you
I
as well.
think one of the really interesting things that often comes up when people ask me about this is that music in oral cultures has is much more purpose driven. Like everything that you sing, there's a warning song, there's a
Mhm.
birthing song, there's a visitor coming song, there's somebody died song, there's a work song, there's all kinds of work songs. There's slow and fast, and there's dance songs, and all that beautiful complexity, and that's tied into what we're doing every day. And we follow the rhythms of the sun and the seasons, and we thank the waters and the airs and the people and the insects and right, the birds and all
Right.
that Thanksgiving is
That's so cool.
that's what I grew up around in Zambia. And when I since for the last 20 years have been an ally to walking beside the red road here in Canada,
Mhm.
I hear a lot of the same things in their oral tradition of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee friends, educators and elders that have helped guide me in my own healing journey. And so many of those teachings are consistent from what I heard as a child in Zambia to teachings here now. Yeah, it's profound. And
Yeah.
in the oral traditions, it's just different. The whole, like in your one question about how do you give advice about if an adult wants to learn an
Oh, yeah, I
instrument.
asked you that beforehand, before we talked, but that is
Yeah,
something
but
I'm interested in. If an adult wants to so just to flip the other people,
yeah,
if an adult
jump
wants
in.
to learn, like,
Yeah,
for example, I mean, that's something I took piano as a kid, and I always wanted to, learn instruments throughout my life, but so many other things came up. But like you had said something the way that you help adults is just kind of get into it, pick up some chopsticks and start drumming. Like no matter what instrument you want to lean into, just incorporating it into your life somehow. That's kind of what you had said. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just find ways to weave it in.
Yeah.
I often made money from tutoring, and I had a music school for a while that didn't really have a method, but it grew to about 75 kids a week. And it started to include teenagers and adults and
Mhm.
families. It became workshops. It was like a School of Rock style
That's
music
cool.
approach, but this was before the movie came out.
Mhm.
I was saying about being frustrated by having to sight read music to learn how to
Mhm.
play music. It
Right,
made me
right.
reflect on why is that the case? I mean, when we learn if music's a language, we learn our first language by listening. We're
Right.
listening for a year or two
Okay.
and we're going goo goo gaga. And then all of a
Yes.
sudden
Yeah.
one day we say mama or something like it. And then mama says, yes, that's mama. Say it again, say it again. And so we keep saying it in this wah wah kind of like mistake kind of way. But
Mhm.
we are we are encouraged, we are given unconditional license to repeat that mistake. Say it again, say it again, say it again. And so we actually learn to speak by hearing and speaking and
Mhm.
being corrected and being hopefully loved and encouraged while doing that. Right.
Right.
And so that natural process of learning, ideally for someone wanting to pursue music,
Mhm.
even if you think you're out of tune, first start
Yeah.
by singing. Do the breathing first, become aware of
Okay.
your breath, do all that breath work, and then add a hum. If you're shy to sing, just hum, even if it's out of tune, whatever. Find
Right.
yourself at the
Okay.
dish sink washing dishes. You open up that cupboard door, you put one foot up, and you do like all the good
Great.
advice that our physiotherapists tell us to do with our
Yes, yes.
body. And it's always,
Yeah.
my body's an instrument. So I'm going to do all the good habits. I'm going to drink a glass of water here and I'm going to wash the dishes and hum and
Right.
either hum to myself or hum to the radio or try to remember words to a song or recite a recipe and sing it singing a note means that you're making every cell in your body vibrate at the same frequency. And as you do those long tones and you learn to maintain your posture and your openness and your
Mhm.
ocean breath, and you do three of them to begin recruiting your awareness and your psyche and your body into the music making act. And I tell my students, usually those three breaths take about 15 seconds if to do three slow ocean breaths. And in the first breath, I pause the past. I try to imagine there's this, tape deck from the 80s that I used to have as a teenager. And there's a
Mhm.
pause button and there's all those rewind tapes of everything in the past, the regrets, the
Mhm.
whatever, the worries and the things and all the highs and the lows and all that bias. And you just push the pause button. And on the second breath in, there's another tape deck that's all the future, anticipations, worries, stresses,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
I picture like as I relax, release it, I visualize pressing the pause button on the past and the future. And in that third breath, I'm just trying to listen to whatever's in that actual moment, millisecond by millisecond. The sound of my air releasing, the sound, what's ever in the room, hum of a motor, the hum of lights. Is there a truck outside the window? Is there birds chirping? Is there the wind? Open all your senses to the temperature of the room, the humidity, quality of the breath you're taking, and then the next one. And then just listening, going back to that inner perhaps baby that was the first time before we said anything we would just listen and so where are we right now. The key to unlock our feelings or our emotional conflicts or mental stress is those three breaths. And if the human body can take 15 seconds to do those three, pause the past, pause the future, and just come into the moment, from there, then we can work on, okay, do I need more moments to clear my thoughts because I'm stressed? Is there a dilemma that I have that I need to meditate on and sit and breathe for 5 minutes? Weave it
Right.
in.
Okay. Well, I really like that. So just like weave it into your life. And so how did that work with some of the students? Like
Well,
could be
I'll
at
tell
kids, but
you,
maybe adults. I'm thinking about
people
adults.
came to me and they would say, I learned over the years that people were coming with, there was basically three streams of people from child to adult. It would be people who wanted to explore, either never had lessons, never had the privilege of money lessons, and now they were adults and they could afford them. They wanted to explore something brand new. Also, adults that had lessons, but they were bad lessons or traumatic lessons.
Oh
And
man.
that was,
Yeah.
that was deep work. Because some people, in fact, I had a couple that had got hit on the hands, and
Yeah.
their hands would jump back from the keyboard, and that
Oh
was like a
gosh.
year of just
Yeah.
like breathing and sitting there, just like hands in the lap first, and then hands on the keys without playing it. It is a real healing thing that happens when we are willing to sit and breathe and get deeper into a listening moment and take ourselves back to that inner soul awareness of a child, and then to gain the curiosity. What if I were to hum? What if I were to make a sound? What if I were to share my voice with the world?
Mhm.
Is that oral tradition? That's the primal ancient one. And these more modern written traditions that we have, I mean, the piano notation system's very young. It's only, 400 years old.
Mhm.
I'm not an expert on any of that, but I know the guitar tablature is much, much older. But ultimately, you want to start as an explorer, I think.
Okay.
The three streams were explorer, amateur, and professional. Amateurs were people who, amateur, I believe the definition meaning for doing something for the love of it, right?
Yeah.
Just the sheer joy. So,
Right.
like people who say, "Oh, I'm getting married next year. I want to play a song on my grandfather's violin," or "I want
Okay.
to,"
Yeah, sure.
something like that. Or everyone had a different reason, and everyone had a different way that they wanted to learn. And my intake question was, "What do you want to be able to do with the instrument?" And why is there a special reason why you picked guitar or flute or sax or whatever or voice? And is there something you want to be able to do? And some people come in, there was like retired CEOs, and they come in, it's like, I knew I was an artist all along, but I knew it's smarter to make my money early. And now I'm 55 and
Interesting.
I'm done. So it's like, my goal is to be a Las Vegas lounge saxophone player.
That's
So
pretty
we
cool.
did like, okay, well, let's hang out for the summer and do 8 lessons in July and August. And then, I'll get you going with some play along CDs. And for the most part, I tried to get people out on their own as quickly as possible and
Oh,
not
I
get
like
them
that.
into like ongoing expensive lessons. It's our birthright, right? It's a language. Like,
It is.
and
I
before
like
the
this.
recorded sound, humans just had to make their own entertainment on a Saturday night. Yeah, all our pioneer ancestors, they'd be like, doing a barn dance or whatever, and you'd know hundreds and hundreds of songs. And probably most of the old people didn't have dementia because they knew hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah,
songs.
because you had to remember all that in those oral traditions. Actually, it's a lot of stuff you have to keep in your memory to be able to
Right?
remember the songs or just the old stories that people would tell. Now, you had mentioned something else
Yeah.
that you worked with alongside, like, the indigenous community as well, and I'd
Yeah.
seen that on your website there in Canada.
I guess in my 30s, when I made my first live album at the top of the Senator in Toronto in 1999 with some of Canada's top players. And I thought, as I reflected on it, I thought, I've been in Toronto since I was 10 and the whole world is here. Like, it's influenced so much of my music as really a world beat musician, you
Mhm.
know. My early understanding of community in Zambia in the 70s when I came to Toronto in 1976, Trudeau's Liberals were in it. It was the big push nationally was promotion of multiculturalism, right? So when I arrived as a 10-year-old, I'm like, "Oh yeah, in my whole lived experience in Toronto, with all those cultures, also dealing with the racism that many of my friends in inner city schools, it was like a united nation of friends, right? Everyone had a lot of
Right,
world
right.
friends, and thought, okay, if I'm gonna stay, I thought the least I could do is to know more about the original people that lived here. First, I thought about the jazz grants in New York and LA and such, and just so many other people are doing that, and it didn't really feel as close to my heart as my unique experience in Africa. And I thought, should I
Mhm.
apply for grants to go to Africa and be there? And I thought, no, I don't think Mother Earth really needs another older white man like flying across the earth, ripping through the skies, just so that I can have like just why? Because I have privilege to get over there and have. It just made sense to me that to stay grounded here, and there thought, no, I didn't want to go back to Zambia. I did want to base myself in Toronto. And when I started researching Toronto, that part of the history of the word is the meeting place. You
Oh,
know,
okay. So Toronto is the meeting
Garlundo
place.
actually is where the sticks stand in the water. Garlundo being
Oh,
the
that's really
tree.
cool.
You know,
Okay.
these Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee that come up and that I'm reading about, the Ojibwe and Mohawk,
Mhm.
Cayuga and all that. And I just started to read about them, and then I started to notice community events, and I would go out to powwows, and find all those first doorsteps and the Native Center, friendship centers, and a lot of open doors and a lot of sharing of knowledge that's possible and has always been possible. Is all part of the treaties of how we're supposed to share the land.
Right.
Oh, yeah, who was here first, right? It's the least I can do to know something about the people that lived here
Yeah, that's
sustainably for thousands of years, and it's not a half bad idea for all of us.
yeah, that's really interesting. We should like all of us to think about like, yeah, who are
Yeah,
in our in our own regions, right? I'm in Southern
yeah,
California, and yeah, that learning more about the indigenous tribes because they
yeah.
were here. Yeah.
I think one of the most profound moments when I was had met some people at a language class, and they were talking about a frontline event, to protect the waters, waters that were at risk. Uh,
Right.
and and there was a grandmother was being interviewed, and she made a very good point, which you probably heard as well. But she's like, it's not just we're doing this for our children. We're doing this for our children because we think of the future, the seven generations thing. And so you and I now are talking, you as adults, we have a relationship. Our children may or may not have a relationship, but through us, they do. And so
Right.
we're fighting for your children as well, right? Like the science is out there. Like none of the toxic products that are made by humans, you know,
Yeah.
are sustainable. It's just we all know it.
No. Yeah,
It's
we
not.
know. We
I
know.
read somewhere a
Yeah.
statistic years ago, and I haven't said this for a long time. I don't know if it was true, but it was that the number one by volume, the number one product that human species makes is concrete.
Oh, really?
I'm living
That's
in
the
the
number
big
one
city.
product?
I'm just looking at it, it's like it just
Yeah.
reminds me of the movie Star Wars when I was 10 years old,
Yeah.
1977 when it came out, and it's like that's what we're actually is that what we're
Yeah.
trying to build? And we see all these movies with multi-level cities, and we'll have flying cars, and there'd be 10 levels of roads in the air. It's like, is that
I know,
where's the
really. I
corn
know.
plants and the fishes and the bullfrogs,
I know, really. Really. But yeah, that's really
Explore music. Music
yeah,
brings us into the
I
moment.
like that exploring music and how it can how yeah, how it can bring us into the moment, and I guess how it's healing as well for our lives and cathartic, can help us, like, get through things.
I feel like our education system generally puts a wet blanket on a lot of the arts.
Yeah.
And, so because it's reading focused, many people, it's introducing a graphic way of reading that some people may get, but most
No,
kids would
that's true.
learn best just by going by ear and doing action songs and gestural, using their body more and ambidextrous, approaches to learning and communal songs. And all these folk songs traditionally had lessons and teachings in them as well, right? They're always, it's good advice or cautionary tales,
Yeah.
things that were useful to kids' survival and square dances and how to, coordinate and step lively and all that.
Yeah, and it seems like in the past, some of those cultures, and even in our own culture, like you said, like squared, I mean, I don't know if it was depending where we live, right? But yeah, square
Yeah,
dances, barn dances, things like this. It seemed like, yeah, more people were involved in musical things or dancing in regular lives,
yeah,
even as adults. Sometimes, yeah, we'll do that still a little bit, but, it was a big part of life because they weren't
sure.
like watching TV and stuff like this or online or basically anything. That was how they shared information, shared stories and entertainment as well. I don't know, it seems
Yeah,
like,
it's really true. I think those traditions, the oral traditions are much more. I mean, that's where legends can be born. That's where fables and teachings and parables,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
will, are can happen in an oral tradition where nothing's written down or recorded.
Hmm.
If you
Yeah, you
look
can have
at the jazz
reciprocal
tradition,
behavior.
Buddy Bolden, who was never recorded because he died before it happened, Louis Armstrong was supposedly his protege, right? So there's Louis
Hmm.
playing, all this stuff. But Buddy Bolden was legendary. The
Right.
stories when you
Yeah.
hear the history books, he's like, "Oh, you can hear him on the other side of the canal street, across the river, 20 miles or whatever, right?" And you can hear the drums from Congo Square, like they're at it again. Ah, and everyone's because there's no way to record it, and so you have to believe the storyteller, and truth and
Yeah.
history
Yeah,
becomes
that's true.
the skill of the oral storyteller and the scribes or whatever the bards, right?
Right.
And then like so now we have recordings where it's like, oh, I heard this amazing band last night. Check out their YouTube video. So you go on the YouTube video and now you're looking at it on a little electronic screen and you got whatever's going on in your house and you're like watching TV and
Yeah.
that's real. And you go on, it's
That's
like that's not so great, right? Because the whole sound experience and the walls aren't vibrating.
exactly.
You're hearing the
Exactly. No,
notes.
that's true. That's true.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
So the I think if there's one thing I think in my life, it's like having grown up in an oral tradition and having become a jazz musician and having this learning disability that made it hard, especially hard for me to read music and approach it
Yeah.
that way. it's really affirming to do that myself now, play more by ear, and then also encourage other people to, yeah, it's our birthright to sing.
Yes.
And if most of the people that came to me had adults had a story about, I had a bad teacher, or
Yeah, that's what I was
even
about to
kids would come to
mention
me and say,
about
I hate my
yeah.
music teacher at school.
And
And
I
it was
wonder
just,
how I mean, this might be yeah, that's a little bit of a different topic, but you brought it up and
yeah,
probably close with this, but yet about traumatic experience with music teacher, and when you were talking about it, I was remembering I'm sure she's not listening. I don't even know if she's alive anymore. But my piano teacher growing up, oh boy,
right?
it really just turned me off to piano. And she was mean. She was meaner to my brother actually. But
Oh,
she made
wow.
kids cry
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, and she was just was mean. So they were taught to be stern, and maybe I kind of interpreted it that, but I think I have a little trauma around it that I just didn't want to keep exploring. I was bored of the
Yeah.
piano anyway, but I didn't want to keep exploring other music. And I would remember I really liked there was a particular band that I liked at the time, and I remember I actually went and got some of their music because I don't know, I was exploring because she wanted us to learn it, so I brought it in, and she was kind of like, "Why do you wanna learn?" It was more modern and this and that, and she really discouraged that a lot, and I
Yeah.
feel like she should have encouraged it. But anyway, I wonder how
Yeah.
many people a lot of people go through this then, like
For
with the
sure. Oh,
and
it's
they
so
have trauma
common.
from the
It's so
teachers.
common. Yeah, do you know,
This is just funny.
it's from the the less fewer opportunities. Like, I had a professor who surveyed us in first year university, and he said, who goes weekly to a family or some event where they sing? A church, a synagogue, a mosque, barn dance, whatever,
Mhm. Right,
karaoke
right.
night, even,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
not secular
Yeah,
activities.
yeah, right.
Fine. And, very whatever, out of a class of 50, maybe like less than 10 put up their
Yeah,
hands.
yeah,
Right. And he said, I'm not judging anybody, but before recorded sound, that's how humans, like,
mhm.
weekly, everyone was in church. Churches were
Right,
full, right?
right,
That you
right.
had to, right? That was,
Mhm. Yeah,
and and it's true. Yeah, it's really we have to fight to have this a chance to sing again, together, and just to find
yeah.
opportunities to do that. It's really, really healthy. Yeah, it's our birthright, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's really interesting. I really appreciated this conversation
Yeah,
with you.
thanks.
But before we close, I do want to, you had a couple pieces of your own that you wanted to share. So we can play them after
Yes.
at the end here. So yeah. And what are they? And then I'll also provide, you'll send me the YouTube links.
Yeah,
So
I
I'll
can send
provide
you the
these.
links for sure.
Okay.
Well, these were so what you asked me about something that was cathartic. I guess getting music out of me is always feels like a heart-wrenching process. And
Right.
one of the songs that I wrote quite some time ago, or in 2002, I guess, was this idea of, like, looking at all the things that divide us,
Hmm.
what is our common heritage, as earthlings, that we share
Right.
the earth with other creatures who are also
Yeah.
earthlings, like beyond human and species,
Hmm.
let's move to speciesism, and just open ourselves up more to that important relationship that,
Hmm.
again, comes to me from my early lived experience in Zambia, but also
Yeah.
my current, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee family, friends, educators, that remind us to go slow and to be cautious about what we speak, because in oral traditions, you can't take it back. What you
Right.
say sticks, and is very
Yeah. Yeah.
important. So,
That's a good reminder.
with written words, it's more like, oh, well, we can go back and check that you said this. No, no, let's check the written document, and it becomes always this debate about what truth is.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so this song, one of the lyrics that I like, it's called "A Oneness Without Sides," and one of the things is, we can move on together and come to know a oneness without sides. We need not to be vengeful in the name of others who have died. Let's try to stop fighting. We can remember ourselves to our own heaven and hell. Let's bring the world back online. Hear your Mother Nature rhyme. All time, all time. All fine, all fine. No mine, no mine. No crime, no crime. And in that, that came from an indigenous ceremony. Elders were saying that in their civilization, they didn't have money. They exchanged through relationship of services and such, but they didn't have money that divided us. And they often say that they didn't have crime as well, in the sense that we
Mhm.
have crime today. It's not that
Right.
people didn't ever do bad things, but the justice system that they had, often through a medicine wheel or through wampum agreements between tribes, they were very sophisticated political documents, in beautiful beadwork that, that held nations together and held, you know, so much of humanity in a sustainable way.
Right.
And this I'm thinking particularly of the Haudenosaunee, Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, which is one of the oldest continuous running democracies in the world, and whose teachings were put into the U.S. Constitution. you know so that this my whole experience on this journey of decolonizing my own mind by listening to elders, listening to grandmothers, listening to how they were given power and voice and agency
Hmm.
in these beautiful civilizations that were able to like figure out and be sustainable
Yeah.
with with some of their teachings. For the Anishinaabe, the seven grandfathers, the respect, wisdom, humility, love, honesty, truth, and courage. And to hear their language, if you hear a first language speaker, it's beautiful.
Oh, I
I
bet it's
write a
really
bit about that
beautiful.
on my peacemaking page on my website,
Okay.
kennycurry.com.
Oh, so it's KennyKirkwood.com is your
Yeah,
website?
and
Mhm.
there's just the whole sense of like, yeah, understanding
Right.
what the worldview is from an indigenous perspective can really help us, I think, as settlers and people who also, seek to find our own relationship to our place on earth.
I agree. I agree. Oh, that's great. So KennyKirkwood.com, and
Yeah,
then we will close this out and we'll play a couple of those
for
the
sure.
videos.
Yeah,
Okay.
a Oneness Without Size is a YouTube video, and the other one is Mother Take Me to the River, which is
Mother,
honoring
take me to the
women and
river.
water. And I collaborated that during COVID with a woman named Lorraine Segato, who was part of the '70s. There was a group here in Toronto called the Parachute Club, and they had a number one hit in Canada.
Oh,
And
great.
anyway, she's one of my heroes, and
Oh,
so
cool.
we got to work together on that song.
Okay.
So
Oh, great.
yeah,
Hear
let's
them. Yeah.
keep the village growing, keep singing every day, explore music,
I'm gonna try that. I'm
and
actually gonna
be
try that.
be an explorer and overcome and sing away.
I'm gonna
Play a
try that.
rhythm instrument, a voice, like a lung instrument, and a harmony like piano or key or guitar.
Okay. Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
I-
those are my
I'm
categories. And
inspired. I'm gonna,
yeah, send me messages. Let's stay in touch. Thank you so much
yes.
for having me on.
Thank you for being on the show. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your evening. And then after this, we will hear that your the two pieces that you mentioned.
All right.
Great.
Peace.
Well, thank you so much,
Let's
Kenny.
stay in
Have a good
touch.
night.
Okay,
For
bye
sure.
bye.
Don't you wish the water wasn't filled with plastic bottles to breathe the air without the fossil fuel? If you run the race, you run the risk of selling out for gold. Live your dream for future lives and times. In the streams of yesterday's newspapers, telling stories of opinion, selling stories of dominion. I feel like I'm slipping away from a culture that divides. I feel like I'm moving into a future that provides. So how is the feeling inside of myself? I just fly into my higher self.
Wheels don't stop turning. Breathe in the moment in your mind. People stop sleeping. Wait in the water flowing by. Why are we living inside of ourselves? Why not fly into our higher selves? Don't you know the time will come when you will blossom?
flower that you are. Take the time to plant this mighty thought each and every day into your sweet heart. Time keeps turning after all. It's drawing a circle with all different points of view. We can move on together and come to know a oneness without sight. We need not be vengeful in the name of others who have died. So try to stop fighting. We can remember ourselves to our own heaven and hell. Bring the world back online. Hear your mother nature rhyme all time, all time, all fine, all fine. No mind, no mind, no crime, no crime. Don't you know it's hard for me? Don't you think I will blossom like the flowers you are? Take the time to plant this nice flower. Each and every day, your sweet heart. Keeps turning out its reward. It's your stories of hope. Telling stories of failure. Seven stories of
Mother, take me to the river, wash away my troubles in the flood.
Good-minded people, look at what's coming down. All our relations show us where wisdom's found. Oh, let us learn to get along. Come on now, let's learn to get along.
Here's what I'm saying. We can expand our minds, craving connections, living my life alive.
Live our life alive.
Oh, let us learn to get along.
We gotta get together, listen to each other, accept the differences, just live and let live.
I'm gonna take a deep breath, cause the world is lit. Gonna clean my backyard, pause my TV set. Free my mind today from the media trip. Wanna step outside, sip the planet strip. Open up to the wonder